The question is, are we creating an environment where we get the unsaid said about ideas? Employees, and a lot of the research shows that the front lines employees have great ideas, but are we hearing that?
We got to get to tonight's guest, all right? Without further ado, Stephen Gaffney, communications consultant for Fortune 500 companies. And in the past, I hope I'm not going to get in trouble of saying this. One of his clients is the FBI. Am I allowed to say that, Stephen? Or CIA? Did I get it mixed up?
It's all right.
That's a great answer there. It's all right.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. I don't want to get Steve into trouble here. But many Fortune 500 companies consider Stephen their go-to guy on many issues, including how to build a great team, how to reduce friction within a team, building. And by the way, Stephen, throughout the show, a couple of times I'm going to turn to you that people could find out more information, the number, because hey, there are a lot of people out there that could benefit from your services, and many Fortune 500 companies are already familiar with that. So I turn to you, Stephen. First of all, thank you for joining me here once again on Mind Your Business. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Okay. I hope I didn't get into trouble there, because, a lot of people listening, FBI may be listening as well. So, so Stephen, I turn to you again. There was this article in the Wall Street Journal. Here we go. There we go. All right. Even those that are watching on YouTube see the whole show on YouTube, but here on radio, so nice sound effects there. Okay. Some workers who jump ship now say they regret it. So I first turn to Stephen and I say, you know what? How about we break the show into two parts? The first part of the show is going to focus on the company perspective. What do companies need to do? What do they need to be thinking in order to ensure that their team is happy, the morale is high, they build a great corporate culture, there's low friction, all the type of things that a company needs to be focusing on in order to retain a great team. And then the other side, let's look at it from the teams, the employees. What should they be thinking when they're thinking about bolting? Is the grass greener on the other side, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, Stephen, let's take it away. Let's jump in first from the company perspective.
Well, I think, first of all, I really want to talk about this article for a moment, because I think the most telling part about the article is that it reported that nearly half of the workers who did move on this great resignation, but I call it the great reboot, because people evaluated their life and moved in different directions. Nearly half want to go back to their old job. Right. I think that's fascinating.
That's fascinating.
So what that tells us out of this is the importance of not burning bridges from both the company side and the employee side. And that's really critical, because quite often when somebody's leaving a company, how often do you see people being escorted out the door, or you hear of all kinds of things, or it's just, and sometimes that is definitely appropriate. But what we want to think about is how, when people are leaving our company, how are we leaving them? And when we are leaving a company, how are we leaving? So for example, are we leaving strong? Or are we leaving weak? Here's what I mean. During the last days of our job, whether we're giving 2 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice, 4 weeks, whatever it is, are we being strong in our job? I was working with a client, and they had lost a major program. And so they asked me, how do we keep people motivated? And we developed this theme around finish strong. And that's why, because they wanted to leave their client with a perspective of how fantastic we were. But so I say this because whether we're a company and something's disconnecting from a customer or an employee, how are we leaving them? And employees, are they finishing strong? That's really important, because when you think about it, is that really happening? How do we treat other people? Something else I found interesting in life is, have you ever wondered, how do I evaluate how people treat each other, right? Mm-hmm. And are they telling me the truth? Well, I'll give you the secret that I've found. If you want to know the true character of a human being, don't look at how they're treating you, because everybody can put on that smiling face. watch how they talk about and how they treat other people, because that's eventually how they'll treat you. So when other employees are leaving, as a company, we need to be thinking about what message are we sending all the employees are staying? Because I worked with a company that was brought in because people were leaving after a major layoff, but you say, well, what's the problem? Because the high performers were leaving. And the reason why was because the executives weren't telling people the truth. And so they surprised these layoffs. They weren't being upfront. And then when ultimately they made that move, the people that they wanted to stay ultimately left on a major part because they feel like, I can't trust what that person is saying. So all of this is interesting because I was just struck by nearly half want to come back. So how are we leaving employees, and how are employees leaving the company?
Fascinating. And it's such a important point. In fact, I'll share a personal story. Years ago, when I had moved on from a company that I was working at for 3 years, I made it a point to actually leave on very good terms. I over communicated and was over expressive in my appreciation, and I even kept in touch. And it turned out that because of that, the CEO of that company had referred me on many projects in years afterwards for many, many years, 20, 25 years afterwards. And it was all because I didn't do something stupid. People, Stephen, let's talk about the emotion out there that people have. They're like, when they leave, they want to kind of, kick the door on the way out. And how stupid is that?
Absolutely. It is really important how we treat people. And let's face it, as people are listening or they're watching, we've all made these mistakes. I have. I don't know if you have, but I've encountered a lot. And how we learn in life is by our mistakes. But are we learning, right? And what are we doing differently? But it's so important how we treat another individual and how they treat us. And the key thing is there's a lot we can do about this, which we can talk and get right into.
Yeah. My guest is Stephen Gaffney, communications consultant for Fortune 500 companies and other entities, which I'm not going to slip again. I did at the beginning of the show. Stephen's smiling, but won't say a word. All right. You'll understand if you go back to the beginning of the show. That's all I could say. All right. Anyway, Stephen, welcome back to Mind Your Business.
Thank you. Okay. It's always been great. It's always great being interviewed by you because you have such high energy.
Thank you.
And it that actually speaks to how to keep employees. Make sure the passion is there. I mean, have you ever met somebody say, I'll give you a couple. I have a friend of mine, and I said to him one day, "Are you happy?" And he goes, "Yes, I'm happy." I said, "Well, you may want to inform your face." I mean, people forget to show the passion. I mean, they don't have to jump up and down, but at least show some emotion.
Imagine,
emotions connect.
I'm so happy. So now for this part of tonight's show, for this segment, I'd love to focus on what do companies need to be doing in terms of execution, in terms of real, we call it tachlis. What specific elements do they need to be wiring into their daily program, to their culture, in order to ensure that their team is they really love showing up to work? It's not at the end of the day that I can't wait to leave. It's I can't wait to come. How do they do that?
Here it is, the key. It's love. And people are going, "Oh my gosh, is he going touchy-feely on us?" And the answer is no, because obviously I do a lot of work with the military. I do a lot of work with Marriott, Amazon, all these different companies. Yeah. The answer is no. It's not about being touchy-feely, but it is about love. And here's what I mean by that, is people want to be in a job that they love. And here's, as a leader, what we want to do is make sure we put people in positions of what they love to do. Now, we all can't always love every aspect, but if the majority of our job is not in an area that we love, then we're going to get burned out and we possibly are going to leave. So that's an issue. And the reason why I bring this up is quite often we're talking about putting people in their strengths and what they're great at. Right. But what I've come to learn is a lot of people are good at various things, but it doesn't mean that they want to do it. So quite often people will lean on others who are very talented at doing something, but they never ask, do you really love to do it? Or how about this? I love to do it, but after 5 years, I'd like to do something else, right? And so we don't really capture that love in essence. And in fact, we usually look through the lens of what's great, so what somebody's great at doing. Right. And I just think it's too myopic. It's not enough. So love, and there are 5 loves that a company needs to focus on that will keep employees. And we can jump right into it.
Yes, please.
So the first love is the love of purpose with impact. Purpose with impact. Now, we all know and we've heard about like finding your why and making sure the organization has a sense of purpose. But quite often the purpose is not really with an impact. Here's what I mean by that. If I were to say, like I have a client right now and they do advertising. So our purpose is to give the best advertising to the customer. But what I really think is when you think about it, and when I was coaching them is what does that advertising mean? Well, that advertising means for their customer that with their businesses, they're going to be more successful, they generate revenue, which means they can pay their employees better. And the employees are going to take home and be able to do things more with their family and have better schooling for their kids or vacation or whatever. And in following that thread. So what we really want to look at is purpose with impact. And are we really good with that? And are we sharing that? Or we always focus on the goals on revenue and profit, which is fine for top executives, but it doesn't motivate the everyday person.
Yeah. So one second, I want to go through the 5. Again, the 5.
Yes. Do you want me to go to that number 2? So
yes,
I'll jump
please.
Right to,
yeah.
Okay. So number 2 is the love of being at somewhere where it's special. Let's face it. Why do companies go to Google and Apple and Amazon and a lot of these other companies? There's just something special about them. And a lot of it is like clients I work with, right? Including Marriott, a lot of organizations, when people work with the military, it's a sense of we feel special. We're doing something special. So
purpose.
The first is
you mean
the love
purpose.
of purpose and impact. But this is really like we feel like it's special. But this also means, are we appreciating employees? Are we noting how they are special to us? We care about them. So when we talk about the love of feeling that we're up to something special, we want to feel like we're part of a special company, not a company in which we could go anywhere and we're all doing the same thing. And I say this because I work with a lot of great companies, and where they can often move the needle on is showing how we're different. So it begs the question, do employees really understand how this company, this organization is different from another organization? And are we really driving home that? So when they get that other offer, it's not just about maybe money or benefits, but they're saying, yeah, that's true, but I feel like it's something special here. So that's the second love.
Yep.
And I can keep going, but
yeah,
I don't
please.
know how we are.
Oh, we're good.
The third one is where I think is the sweet spot, and that's the love of team. You know, you were acknowledging your team. And we want to be part of a really successful team. And I call it, the key is what we want to establish is a consistently high achieving team, a consistently high achieving team. So a lot to unpack there. First thing is most of the stuff out there is about high performing teams. And high performing teams to me is old school and it's not enough. Why? Because the word performing could be confused with hard work. So, which is not really what we're up to. We're up to achievement. So high achieving team describes much more accurately what we want to be part of. Think about it. If you're a very talented person and you want to be part of a team, you want to be part of a team that's not performing well, that's fine. That's hardworking, okay. We want to be achieving something. We want to be number one. You know, I think it is interesting that although the Tampa Bay Bucks ran into some problems last year, it is interesting that they were able to keep all their employees, all their players the following year. Why? Because people want to be part of a winning team. Now, they didn't achieve it last time, but I would venture to say that anytime we create that winning culture, that people want to be part of it. So we want to have this consistently high achieving team. So the other part is consistent. We want to keep doing it. Well, I have uncovered and work with a lot of organizations that there are 12 essential elements of a consistently high achieving team. There's 12 of them. And we can go through some of that too, or we can keep going with the love.
Yeah, I would stay with the 5, with the love, and then maybe if we have time, we'll get back to the other ones. Yeah.
So number 4 is the love of freedom to take initiative. Love of freedom to take initiative. We want to not only be part of something special, part of a team, but we also want to have that freedom to work our magic. And as opposed to being in an environment where there may be high achievement, but we're being micromanaged. You ever work with somebody who's just, they're on you, right? Now, people say, well, what about achievement? Well, we want to be clear on the goals, but then let people do their magic. As I often say to leaders, let people do it their way. As long as it's legal and ethical, who cares? Let them do it. Manage by achievement. And I've worked with a lot of top achievers, and what they want to do is they want to work their magic. They want to allow themselves to take initiative. I'm doing a lot of work now on how to create daily initiative in everybody's job. You know, there's a lot about initiative and creating a culture and creativity and breakthroughs and whatnot. But I'm not talking about an innovative service or product. I'm talking about every day, are we innovative? But a lot of that is around creating that environment so employees feel like they can take initiative, that freedom to take initiative. And then the 5th one is the love of NSB. So that's NSB.
He's going to the chart.
Yep. Which stands for North Star Brightness. North Star Brightness. We want to be part of somewhere which great about purpose and, you know, all that special, but we also are excited about the future. Where are we going with the organization? So it's not just creating one of these generic vision statements that sound like all the other companies. It's like, what's our North Star? And I use the word North Star Brightness because it should be bright. It should be clear. And what are we up to? What's different? So again, when employees might be tempted to go maybe somewhere else, they think, my gosh, I don't want to go anywhere because I feel special. I feel like we can take initiative. There's a strong sense of purpose. But we're also going to places where no one else has gone. We're doing something that's really exciting. We're up to something where our future is so bright. North Star Brightness. Those are the 5 loves.
Wow. Mind Your Business with Yitzchok Saftlas right here on 710 WOR. And hello to all those watching on YouTube. Yes, the YouTube episode will be up in short order. In case you're wondering when it's going to go up on YouTube, if you subscribe to our channel, you are automatically notified. Subscribe on YouTube at 710 WOR Mind Your Business. Again, 710 WOR on Mind Your Business. Hit that little subscribe button and you're automatically notified every time a show goes live. Well, without further ado, tonight's guest is Stephen Gaffney, communications consultant for Fortune 500 companies and the military. That's how he said it. That's a kosher way of saying it. We're not going to further identify any other specific branches of government. If you heard us in the beginning of the show, that is it. And for those on YouTube, you can go back to the beginning of the show. Okay, anyways. Tonight's show was actually inspired because of an article in the Wall Street. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, what happened to the mic? Okay, 1 second. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Wall Street Journal. Some workers who jumped ship now say they regret it. Millions left their positions for new ones during the pandemic, but recruiters say many are realizing the grass isn't always greener. So I said to myself, okay, who could better speak about this topic than Stephen Gaffney? Stephen, thank you again for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's always great having you
Love
on.
the dialogue.
Oh, yes. We're now at this point, I'd like to go to the vantage point of the teams, the employees. What are some of the things that are important for employees to be cognizant about? Whether it's on how to make sure that there's no friction. What are some of the things that they should keep in mind in their day-to-day positions and also as they're thinking about possibly exiting and going elsewhere?
Well, first of all, when it comes to their current position, the biggest problem in all relationships, teams, and organization is lack of honest communication. And when I'm talking about lack of honest communication, we've talked about this on the other shows, is I'm not referring to the truth or lies or the ethics part. That's okay, but that's not really the problem. The biggest problem is, in fact, not what people say, it's what they don't say to each other. It's what gets left off. It's when we feel surprised and blindsided. And that's one of the four biggest annoyances of employees is when they feel surprised and blindsided. But incidentally, also, I've worked with leaders, executives, CEOs, admirals, and generals, and that's their big frustration. When somebody tells them something that they should have known about it, and you're like, well, why didn't they tell us? So the key is to get the unsaid said. Well, here's the interesting thing I found out. The number one reason why people don't get that unsaid said is fear. Fear of retribution, fear it's not going to come out wrong. I'm sure there's people in your life, like, for example, have you ever had somebody in your life tell you, hey, you can tell me anything. I love feedback. Please, I want to hear your feedback. So give them some constructive criticism and they flip out on you. Next.
Didn't you ask for this? Excuse me?
Next time they ask us for that feedback, we're like, oh, I'm not going there. I bet you right now. Right. I'm sorry, you're going to say?
No, it's 100% right. I mean, come on.
I bet you right now there are people in your life where you're like, oh, I'm not going there. There's some we feel very open to share and others we don't. It's like, have we ever attended like a town hall meeting and somebody says, any questions? And the employees are like, oh, don't ask, and there's a lot of things to realize of that. But the whole thing is getting the unsaid said. So for employees, are we getting the unsaid said every day? And on what kind of environment are we setting? Let me give you an example.
Sure.
I was doing a session and this lady pushed back on me. She said, I think actually getting the unsaid said can get you in trouble. I said, okay, I can imagine maybe a situation, but why don't you give me an example? She said, okay, I gave my coworker feedback that about the way he was doing his job is not what I liked and I didn't think it was good. And I gave him some constructive criticism and he got very upset. And I said, well, why did you share that with him? And she said, well, I shared it with him because I care about him. I care about the mission. I care about what we're up to. I want him to be successful and I want to help him out. And I said, well, did you say all of that? And she was silent. She said, no. I said, I want to come back to my original point. The biggest problem is not what people say. It's what they don't say. It's what they leave out. We even leave out appreciation. We leave out a lot of things. So, back to these loves we're talking with a company, they're there within our organizations. The question is, are we getting that unsaid said? Are we crystal clear with purpose, with impact? Are we crystal clear about our teams? Are we crystal clear about our NSB, our North Star brightness? Are we crystal clear about that? And with employees, are we raising what needs to get said? And how are we doing that? In fact, I want to just, out of the inspiration of what we're up to,
sure,
is if they want more help in this, I wrote a book. It's like a booklet a long time ago. It's called the Fish Booklet, but it doesn't really matter. But if they send us an email, we'll send them the booklet for free on how to share difficult messages so they go well. And we can talk more about that. But here's what I want to leave people with and what the central point is. What to pay attention to is, in the environment, do I feel freedom to speak? And am I creating an environment where people can speak to me? Because sometimes employees ask for feedback from their boss and then they get upset. And then they wonder why their boss doesn't give them any more feedback. Now, I would coach the boss to be a lot more stronger than this, the leader to be stronger than this. But it's really about getting the unsaid said. That is one of the the key things to pay attention to. It's not what people are saying. It's what are they leaving out, and how do we get that unsaid said?
Such a profound perspective. The unspoken part is so revealing. But since it's not spoken, people are not focused on it, and therefore it's non-existent.
Yeah, I'll give you another suggestion to look at is even with the creativity. Back to the daily innovation in our job. The question is, are we creating an environment where we get the unsaid said about ideas? Employees, and a lot of the research shows that the front lines employees have great ideas, but are we hearing that? How often are people like calling us up, knocking on our door, calling us for whatever is appropriate nowadays, but is letting us know about ideas? And if people are not sharing ideas, newsflash, there's some barrier. Now, maybe we didn't let them know that we really want to hear their ideas. But do you know the number one thing that motivates people to share ideas? And the research shows the number one thing is to show that we'll use their ideas. That now people say, well, I can't use all the ideas. I got it, but at least show that you can. I remember a general calling me one day and he said, well, we are using employees' ideas, but they've slowed down. They're not giving us that many ideas anymore. And I said to him, well, how are you letting people know that you're using those ideas? And it was over the phone. It was silent, and he went silent. He said, that's a really good point. We're using the ideas, but we forgot to let other people know that we're using the ideas. When we're asking things from our customers, from our employees, are we actually showing them how we're using them? Are we letting them be the heroes? What are we doing with that? So another area to look at, because people want to be part of an environment where they can show their brilliance. Are we creating that environment where people can share those ideas? And if not, what's getting in the way, and what are we going to do to dissolve those barriers?
Oh, such great points. Such great points. And by the way, for those listening on the show, this will be up on YouTube. And those that, if you want to be notified when it will go live, no problem. Just subscribe on YouTube. We're at 710 WOR, Mind Your Business. A little slower there. On YouTube, 710 WOR, Mind Your Business. Will come up. And you could see there from the hundreds of videos that featured incredible guests, Beth Comstock, Jeffrey Hazlett, many other incredible guests, and you can get to hear their wisdom. And when you click on subscribe, you are automatically notified every single time a episode goes live. Before we go to a commercial break, Steve, how can people find out more information? And also about that book. What is it, the fish book?
Yeah, if they just put the fish book, we'll know what that is. Okay. If they go to our website, Just Be Honest, and there's a contact form, and they just send us an email and say that they've listened to the show and they're using something that they've learned from what we're talking about. And so just go to justbehonest.com. That's justbehonest.com.
Welcome back to this amazing show. Yes, my guest is Stephen Gaffney, communications consultant for Fortune 500 companies and the military. He said it out of his own. Yeah, we didn't share which parts, which branches, but he did say generals and people on down. So, yeah, he is a go-to person to understand how to manage a team, how to scale a team, how to build a team, how to eliminate friction within a team, all those key categories. And which company cannot benefit from that? I mean, of course, if you're scaling, if you're growing as a company, all those key aspects are critical to scaling a company. So therefore,
I know I'm interrupting, but I want to highlight a really key point that's easy to walk over, and that is this. The way when organizations are scaling, they often look at all their employees. And what I have them focus on is, what is the leadership team? Is it a consistently high achieving leadership team? So consistently high achieving team is a chat. But what we're talking about is a CHOLT, which, anyway, back to the acronyms, not to get too confusing, but essentially making sure that leadership team is a consistently high achieving team. And here's what I found out. This has never been the case where it has not, well, let me say this, so it's not double negative. It's always been the case that whenever an organization is lacking in something, it's showing up in the top leadership team. And by getting that leadership team aligned, a consistently high achieving team, it creates a consistently high achieving organization. So when you're looking at scaling and it looks, oh my gosh, there's so many things to do, it is true. But let's start with the team, and are they emulating it? So let me give you an example. A lot of companies say we want to act as one and we're all team players and creating this, but then they create goals that everybody's kind of fending for themselves or creating a whole bunch of silos, and they don't bring people together. Again, there's that great energy about bringing it together. So they'll say, well, this area is not working well with this area. I always say, well, look at the leadership, because when the leaders are working together as one, it'll trickle on down throughout the organization. That's always the best use of investment dollars. And I've worked with countless organizations, never seen that where it hasn't been the case.
Now, Stephen, earlier in the show, you touched on something that was very intriguing, the 12 essential elements of a high-achieving team. Now, we only have around 15 minutes or so left to the show. You probably could talk about this for hours. But is there a way to get that in? We would love to go through and perhaps some of the elements you've already touched on, the 12 essential elements of a high-achieving team. And the reason why I want to bring that up also is because that probably does tie in, because if a company is executing or really wired to look out for those 12 essential steps, then I would imagine that the corporate culture is good. There's much lower turnover, much higher retention, because everything is burning on all cylinders. Is that correct?
Absolutely. In fact, the way I look at that, the Wall Street article is that one of the reasons why employees are regretting like that move and they want to come back is because they realize, wait a minute, that team was really excellent. I want to be part of that organization. So maybe, yeah, I'm getting paid more, but I don't know. I'm not. In fact, even cited about somebody feeling they're not working as part of a team. We want to be part of that consistently high achieving team. So let me go through the 12 and we can always, and go from there. So I work with a lot of organizations and the job is to instill these 12. So we obviously spent a lot of time on this, but let me just give you the highlights. Number one, know your North Star, right? We talk North Star brightness, but I say PGS. It stands for purpose, goals, and strategy. A lot of times a team is not really clear where it's ultimately going. What's the purpose and the goals that pull people together and the strategies. An example, even on a simple everyday example, is have you ever attended a meeting and left the meeting and gone, what was the purpose of the meeting? I mean, it's so whenever I do this, it's kind of interesting. Not whenever, but a lot of times when I'm working with a client, they go, oh, we know our North Star PGS. And I say, okay, why don't we just ask the team? And so I remember doing this one time and we went around the room and people gave all different versions. And my client looks at me and he goes, oh no. And he said, I was clear. And I said, let me be really clear. The definition of clarity is by the receiver, not the sender. When we say I've said it, so anyway. So your North Star. The second one is everyone shares to get the unsaid said. Now we talked about that earlier. The biggest problem is not what people say, it's what they don't say. But we want everyone to share and get the unsaid said. So what does that mean? That means if we're leading a leadership team, if we're leading a team and there's people who are not saying much or not saying anything, we want to call on them and make sure that everyone speaks. Because if we don't, we can make one of the biggest mistakes leaders can make, which is allowing for the loudest voice to win. The loudest voice to win. A lot of times it looks like, well, everybody agrees, but really it's that loud voice. And it can also do the opposite. Sometimes that big negative complainer, right, can send us off in a totally different trajectory where everybody's like, I'm fine with that. I like this. And here's what we know by a lot of studies, that people who are negative tell more people than positive people. So whatever the case is, we want to make sure it's all everyone shares to get the unsaid said. Number 3, be clear on the Vegas rule. The Vegas rule is what happens in here stays in here. Let's face it. How many times have you wanted to share something with somebody and you're like, you know what, if I tell them what I'm thinking, they won't get defensive, but they're going to tell other people. You want to create that cocoon, that leadership team in which we really abide by the Vegas rule. There's a lot of ways to do that, but one of the things is at least be clear on that, because sometimes people share stuff because they don't know any better. We're not crystal clear that it's the Vegas rule. So I now have clients who'll say Vegas rule, and they just emphasize that. And it reminds me, another tool that people can get by going to justbehonest.com, email us, and there's the 5 criteria of a consistently high achieving team. I'm going through these essential elements, but there's a test. So, and that'll help, we can send that to them. Anyway, number 4 is distinguish notice from imagine. And what I mean by notice and imagine is being clear of fact versus opinion. Okay, I want to show you how easy this is to slip in. Have you ever sent an email to somebody and then not return your email? What are you thinking, honestly? What goes through your mind? You send that email and they don't respond.
Yeah, like, why am I being ignored? Like,
Exactly.
Please just tell me. Even let's say you're sending something and it's a delicate matter. So let's say response should be, I hear you. I'm thinking about it. Something, or an emoji with something. Respond.
Well, here's what's interesting is all of what you said and all of what we're thinking is our imagination. It's our opinion.
Right.
And I always say to audiences when I'm doing this, and I ask them this, I'll say, well, who came up with it? Well, first of all, is it a notice or imagine? They say it's imagine. It's my opinion. I said, who came up with it? And they said, we did. And I said, is it negative or positive? And they say it's negative. And so it tells us a very important lesson in life. Never let your silence do the talking. Because when we let our silence do the talking, people fill in the gap and they usually go negative. So distinguishing notice and imagine is an interesting thing because it impacts communication. But another thing is when people have an opinion, they search for a confirmation of that opinion. And we suffer from confirmation bias. And I've worked with a lot of leaders about how to counteract confirmation bias and even investment bias. Investment bias is when we're so invested in something, we just keep doubling down instead of saying, wait a minute, the evidence is crystal clear. How often have you been part of an organization that launches a product or service and it just lands flat? And the truth is there was data that showed differently, but we saw what we wanted to see. So distinguishing notice and imagine is critical. Number 5 is no excuses. Developing that kind of environment where we take responsibilities, no blame, Well, I'd do a better job if they would do this or that would do this, or teams get into that blame game. Wait a minute. The best high achieving teams, the ones they have no excuses. We say, look, it is what it is. They are difficult, but we're going to figure out a way. We'll take responsibility for our attitude and actions. We're not always to blame what's happening, but we are responsible for how we respond. Number 6 is one of my favorites. It's about being them. It's important to remember is to get out of our world into their world, but I like be them because here's what I'm saying. It's not just that rapport. It's not just that connection. And even think about at home with who we're married to or our kids, when we're trying to work with somebody, because they're teams too, are we getting out over into their world? And here's the test. If you were asked to play them in a movie, would you succeed or would you flop? Do you have that ability to where because you know them so well, you could play them in a movie? And when I create that standard, most people realize, you know what? I'm so stuck in my world. I get to go over in their world, but I don't think I can. And if you think you can, try it. Just try and see if you could actually play them and really be them. A lot of stuff to go into, but the big highlight is to be them and to think that way. How are we doing on time?
Yeah, we're doing good. Around 5 minutes left of the show.
All right.
Somehow you'll get it in, I know.
Number 7 is have a consistent communication business rhythm. So consistently high achieving teams develop that rhythm and they avoid the worst meetings of all, got a minute meetings. It's like somebody calls you and say, hey, got a minute. You say, okay. But the problem is that if you do that habitually, what happens is they're never a minute, incidentally. They're always a huge interruption. But the biggest part is even if it goes well, all the other people on the team don't know what you just covered. And so people feel left out. So you want to establish that consistent communication business rhythm by looking at the meetings, what to have, what not to have the daily meeting, strategic meeting. There's a lot of things, but basically having that that consistent communication business rhythm. Number 8 is move with speed by knowing when good enough is good enough. Move with speed by knowing when good enough is good enough. In other words, the key thing is move fast. Speed motivates. Have you ever been part of a team where like the leader just wants to build consensus and we're evaluating and we're talking and stuff and it's like, oh my gosh. But here's the thing. When teams move fast, it attracts high performers. People make decisions fast. I'm not saying being rash, but move fast. Not everything needs to be perfect. Distinguishing that, but move with speed. That is a hallmark of an excellent, consistently high achieving team. Number 9 is let it go. You know that old thing, let it go, the Frozen principle. Remember that movie? But have you ever just worked with a team? The reason why it's bogged down is people keep bringing up the past. Well, I would do that, but I remember we tried that and it didn't work. Or somebody's upset and you ever have people in your life that are just weighing you down because they just keep holding on to things.
Gotta let go.
Yeah, if you have somebody in your life who's just beating you over the head over something and just not letting go, just ask them this. What would it take for you to let it go and to move forward? What can I do? What can we do so we can move forward? Well, you need to, all right, but if we do this, will you be able to let it go, be able to move forward? And we need to let things go because it weighs on us and we're not going to be moving forward if we're held back from the past. And number 10 is come from anything is possible. It's another big favorite of mine is creating an environment where I really do believe almost anything is possible. I had a gentleman share, do you think all relationships could be fixed and resolved? I said, yes. And he said, well, I don't. And my response was, well, how's that working for you? If you think that look, do I know that everything can be solved? No, but having that perspective. And so whenever there's a problem, just think, are we coming from anything is possible? And one of the biggest things is when we benchmark against other organizations, it can inhibit our growth. Number 11 is collective accountability. That's we're in it all together. We're in it and making sure that is that kind of environment where collective accountability. And number 12, to bring it on home, is presume best intent and appreciate. Presume best intent and appreciate. I've never met an employee ever, and I've been at this for over 25 years, where somebody said, listen, don't tell anybody, but I'm trying to screw it up here. I've never met anybody who said that.
Right.
So now people say, but that person is screwing it up. Right. It may be, but that's not their intent. So here's the thing. Are we approaching that a person and giving them the constructive feedback, but presuming that they at least mean well? Winston Churchill said something like, give people the value you want them to have, the virtues you want them to have, and they will tend to rise to the occasion. I'm butchering his quote, but the essence is you want to create that high standard and give people the environment and presume best intent that they're at least trying to go there, and talk to them as if they mean well. There might have been a mistake, but they meant well. And how are we going to correct it and move forward and persevere?
What an amazing show. Amazing how fast that time flies, especially having such a great guest. We're speaking with Stephen Gaffney, and we are basically out of time. But before we close the show officially, Stephen, how can people find out more why Fortune 500 companies in the military turn to you?
Thank you. They can go to justbehonest.com. And if they say our website, justbehonest.com. And, with organizations, if you're interested in kind of the teamwork or in any kind of aspect of stuff, we can talk to you more about that. More than happy to do that. But if they say that they listen to the show and they've used something that we talked about, we'll send them that Just Be Honest or that book or the fish book.
The fish
and then
book.
We just covered about the 5 criteria, how you can evaluate any team in your life. Because think about it. Teams are at home. There are all kinds of things in our personal life and our business life. You can evaluate any team to see what you need to do to make it a consistently high-achieving team.
Amazing. Well, this wraps up an amazing edition. Thank you, Stephen. What an amazing show, talking about how to appreciate the work environment that you're at, and how companies, even more importantly, what steps they need to take to build a high-achieving team, how to eliminate friction and all that. In case you missed it, no worries. By Tuesday morning, the podcast will be up, but even more importantly, the YouTube episode will be up in short order. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, on YouTube, we're at 710 WOR Mind Your Business. You are automatically notified every single time that an episode goes live. Well, this wraps up a great edition of Mind Your Business. Tune in again next Sunday night for another great edition of Mind Your Business right here on 710 WOR. Have a successful week. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.